If you have ever come across ads of smartphones boasting 108 megapixel sensors, the question of is higher better might have definitely come to your mind. But is it true? My name is Shubham Raheja, you're watching Elemental, where we talk about the smaller things in tech that make a much bigger impact on the real world. You can catch us every Sunday, and if you like our series, you can definitely consider subscribing to Gadgets 360 or hitting that bell icon so that you know exactly when we put out our latest videos. Let's start by understanding what megapixels really mean. In this beautiful photo of mine, you can see that we have pixels on both this and this side. Now, if you multiply these two values, you come across this number, which roughly translates to 12 megapixels. Here, mega means million. But are megapixels everything? To understand this, you need to figure out what you're going to be using your camera for. Are you going to click photos professionally that will be shown on high quality print or on a large display? Or is it just for those times when you're lonely and scrolling through your photos on your smartphone display? If the answer is professionally, then higher megapixels might actually help you a lot. If you have more pixels in your photo, you have more data, meaning you can tweak around more. This way you can edit your photos in post, you can do things like cropping, retouching, compositing without losing out on a lot of detail. But there are some downsides to having higher megapixels as well. Since you're capturing so much data, you will have to rely a lot on your smartphone's processing power. That's why if you click a photo on a crazy high resolution like 64 or 108 megapixel, your phone is going to skip a beat until you can click the next photo. You may also face issues with autofocus. Many users experience that with the Galaxy S20 Ultra, although we didn't with our unit. Since a single 108 megapixel photo will occupy anywhere between 15 to 35 megabytes, chances are you will run out of this space sooner than you can imagine. But all of these problems look like nothing when you start shooting in low light. You see, when you start shooting in terrible lighting, your smartphone resorts to a higher ISO value. What's that? Well, in simplest terms, ISO sensitivity is basically your camera sensor's ability to capture light. In case you're shooting in a dimly lit scenario, your camera tries to crank up the sensitivity and hence adding noise or grain so that your photo looks sufficiently bright. But why do high megapixel sensors struggle more in low light? It's explanation time. So I'm drawing this rectangle with some squares in it, alright? Now observe how large the surface area is. Now I'm dividing these squares into smaller squares. Now you see the difference? Since you're essentially packing in more pixels in the same sensor, the surface area of the pixels gets smaller, and so they can't absorb light all that well. If you want the same sensor to work properly in low lighting, you will want to bin them together. So these four small units function as one big pixel, hence the term pixel binning. Get it? Got it? Good. 48 megapixel and 64 megapixel sensors combine 4 pixels and 108 megapixel sensors combine 9. But have you been paying attention to everything? If you did, you might have observed that when pixel binning takes place, which is more often than you might think, it often resorts to 12 or 16 megapixels, which is by today's standards, right? I don't think so. You see, there's a reason why the latest iPhones and Pixels, two devices with unarguably the best cameras in the business, are still packing 12 megapixel shooters. And they more than make up for the less glamorous 12 megapixel sensor by making their software strong. You also get awesome low light performance as well. Also, if you want to project your photos on a large 4K TV, 12 megapixels is more than enough. If you look at the numbers, images will only have to be 8.5 megapixels to fill a 4K display, and to look 1:1 pixel perfect. The same is applicable to that Quad HD Plus display on your latest flagship. Now, another thing to note over here is that most of the photos that you put up on social media would be compressed. Be it Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, doesn't really matter. This basically means that most people wouldn't be able to appreciate the sick details of your ultra high resolution photos. Now, instead of focusing so much on sensors, we would love to see some improvements in smartphone lenses. Lenses play a huge role in photography, be it just field of view or magnification or even how bright your photos look. Now, I'm not saying that these ultra high megapixel sensors are complete rubbish. They aren't. I'm only saying that perhaps it's time for smartphone companies to start investing in accommodating really big sensors with bigger pixels into that thin glass sandwich. Perhaps, probably sometime in the future, we may say that 108 megapixels is the new standard. Thanks for watching Elemental. If you learned something new, do let us know in the comments. And if you want to learn something about tech, don't forget to log on to gadgets360.com.